The gold ring glinted in the firelight one last time before Lydia Reynolds placed it on the wooden counter, her trembling fingers leaving it there with a finality that made her stomach clench with despair. The trading post owner, a grizzled man with tobacco-stained teeth, picked up the delicate band and examined it through a jeweler's loupe. It was the last thing she owned of any value, the wedding ring her mother had given her before fever took her life 3 years ago in St. Louis. Lydia had already sold everything else during her desperate journey west. The silver locket with her father's portrait, gone in Kansas City. Her grandmother's pearl earrings, traded for passage on a wagon train that abandoned her in Colorado territory when she fell ill. Even her good shoes had been bartered away for food somewhere along the trail. Now, in November of 1876, she stood in this cramped trading post in Red River, New Mexico territory, with nothing but the threadbare calico dress on her back, worn boots with holes in the soles, and a wool shawl so thin it barely kept the autumn chill at bay. The nights were growing colder as winter approached the high desert, and last night she had nearly frozen sleeping in the stable behind the saloon. The stable owner had discovered her this morning and chased her out with threats of calling the sheriff. "I will give you $3, the trading post owner said, setting the ring down with a decisive clink. $3, Lydia's voice cracked. That ring is worth at least 20. It is solid gold. $3 or nothing, miss. Take it or leave it. Plenty of folks in this territory trying to sell whatever they have. Times are hard all around." Lydia closed her eyes. $3 would buy her perhaps a week's worth of meals if she was careful, maybe a cheap blanket. She had no prospects for work in this rough mining town. The only respectable position for a woman, a job at the boarding house, had been filled yesterday. The saloon owner had offered her employment, but the leering way he looked at her made it clear what kind of work he expected. She had fled from that conversation before he could finish explaining. "I need a warm coat," she said quietly, opening her eyes to meet the trading post owner's indifferent gaze. "Could you trade the ring for a coat instead? A good wool one?" The man scratched his beard, considering. Finally, he jerked his thumb toward the back corner where clothing hung on wooden pegs. "Got one coat that might fit you. Heavy wool, good condition. Previous owner does not need it anymore." The way he said it suggested the previous owner was dead, but Lydia was past the point of squeamishness. She moved to examine the coat. It was indeed heavy wool, dark brown, with wooden buttons and deep pockets. It was clearly a man's coat, far too large for her small frame, but it was warm. She pressed her face against the fabric and nearly wept at the thought of such warmth. "I will take it," she said. "Need anything else? I can throw in a loaf of bread and some jerky. Consider it charity." His tone suggested he was not a charitable man by nature, but perhaps even he could see her desperation. Lydia nodded, not trusting her voice. She slipped the coat on over her thin dress. It hung nearly to her ankles, and the sleeves extended far past her hands, but when she wrapped it around herself, warmth enveloped her like an embrace. The trading post owner wrapped the bread and jerky in brown paper and handed it to her. "Much obliged," she managed to say. "Word of advice, miss. Town like Red River is not kind to women alone. You got family somewhere?" "No." "Well, winter's coming hard this year, or so folks say. Best find yourself a situation soon, or you will be in a bad way." Lydia left the trading post and stepped into the dusty main street of Red River. The town was situated in a valley surrounded by mountains, and already the peaks were dusted with snow. The air had a bite to it that promised the trading post owner was right about the coming winter. She pulled the too large coat tighter around her body and tried to think. She had come west following a promise. A man named Robert Clemens had courted her in St. Louis promised her marriage, told her he was establishing a cattle ranch in New Mexico territory, and needed a wife to help him build his dreams. She had believed him, fool that she was. She had used the last of her inheritance money to book passage west, traveling for months across dangerous territory. When she finally arrived in Red River 2 weeks ago, asking after Robert Clemens, she learned the truth. He already had a wife and 3 children on his ranch 15 miles outside of town. He had apparently courted several women back east with the same lies. No one seemed particularly surprised or concerned about his deception. That was just how some men were, they told her with shrugs. Lydia had spent the last 2 weeks trying to find any way to survive. She had offered to clean, to cook, to mend clothes, to teach children their letters. Red River was a hard town, though, full of miners and ranchers and men looking for silver in the mountains. Few families, fewer opportunities. She had sold her possessions one by one just to eat, and now she had nothing left. The sun was already sinking toward the mountains, painting the sky orange and pink. Beautiful and terrifying at once, because it meant another cold night was coming. At least she had the coat now. And food for a few days. She walked toward the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to scrub brush and rocky soil. There was a cluster of large boulders there where she had spent 2 nights before being discovered. Maybe she could return there. As she walked, she ate some of the jerky, chewing slowly to make it last. The meat was tough and salty, but it filled her empty stomach. She found her spot among the boulders and settled in, arranging the coat around her body like a blanket. The temperature was already dropping as the sun disappeared behind the peaks. Lydia lay there watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. She had never felt so alone in her 22 years of life. Her parents were dead. She had no siblings. The aunts and uncles who might have taken her in back east had made it clear they could not afford another mouth to feed. Robert Clemens had seemed like an answer to prayer, a chance at a new life, a family of her own. Instead, he had been a liar and a fraud, and she had been too desperate and naive to see through his pretty words. She must have dozed off because she woke to complete darkness and the sound of something moving nearby. Her heart hammered in her chest as she tried to stay perfectly still. Wild animals roamed these mountains. Bears, mountain lions, wolves. She had heard the stories. The sound came again, closer this time. A soft crunching of footsteps on the rocky ground. Then a light appeared, the warm glow of a lantern, and Lydia saw the silhouette of a man leading a horse. "Who is there?" a deep voice called out. "I can hear you breathing." Lydia's first instinct was to stay silent, but she realized that might make things worse. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "I mean no harm, I am just trying to sleep." The lantern moved closer, and she could make out more details. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy sheepskin jacket and a wide-brimmed hat. His face was shadowed, but she could see a dark beard and eyes that reflected the lantern light as he studied her. "You are that woman from town," he said, not a question but a statement. "The one looking for Robert Clemens." "Yes." Lydia sat up slowly, keeping the coat wrapped tight around her. "Figured he was lying about being unmarried. He has that look about him." The man set the lantern down on a flat rock. His horse, a large dappled gray, stood patiently nearby. "You cannot sleep out here." "I have nowhere else to go. Freeze to death tonight, most likely. Temperature is going to drop below freezing." He said this matter-of-factly, without judgment or pity, just stating a fact. "I have a coat now." Even as she said it, Lydia knew how foolish it sounded. The man was quiet for a long moment, and she could not read his expression in the dim light. Finally, he said, "I have a cabin up in the mountains, about an hour's ride from here. You can stay there for the night, get warm, have a proper meal." Every warning Lydia had ever received about trusting strange men flashed through her mind, but she was also practical enough to know her options. Freeze to death out here alone or take a chance on this stranger's offer. She studied what she could see of him. He had not moved closer or made any threatening gestures. His voice was calm, almost gentle despite its deep rumble. "Why would you help me?" she asked. "Because you are going to die out here otherwise, and I am not the kind of man who rides past someone in need." He paused. "Name is August Davis. I raise cattle and horses up in the high country. Been in town picking up supplies. Heading home now. Lydia Reynolds." She hesitated, then added, "I have nothing to give you in return for your kindness. Did not ask for anything." August Davis turned to his horse and adjusted something on the saddle. "But we need to get moving. You can ride. I will walk and lead the horse. Trail is too narrow for both of us on horseback in the dark." Lydia gathered her courage and stood up. Her legs were stiff from the cold and from sitting on the hard ground. August helped her onto the horse with surprising gentleness for such a large man, his hands steady and respectful. The horse was warm beneath her, and she arranged the big coat around herself as best she could while seated. August picked up the lantern and began leading the horse away from town, heading toward the dark mountains. Lydia held onto the saddle horn and tried not to think about all the ways this decision could be a terrible mistake. But the truth was, she had run out of choices. They traveled in silence for a while, following a narrow trail that wound upward into the foothills. The lantern cast dancing shadows on the rocks and scrub brush around them. The night was full of sounds Lydia did not recognize. Rustling in the darkness, the cry of some distant animal, the whisper of wind through the pinyon pines that began to appear as they climbed higher. "How long have you been in Red River?" August asked, breaking the silence. 2 weeks. Long 2 weeks, I imagine." "Yes." Lydia found herself talking, perhaps because the darkness made it easier or because she was so tired of carrying everything alone. "I came from St. Louis. Robert Clemens wrote to me for 6 months. He seemed kind in his letters. Talked about building a future, about the beauty of New Mexico territory, about wanting a wife to share his life. I should have known better than to believe him. Some men are good liars." "Not your fault for wanting to believe in something better." "I sold everything I owned to come here. My mother's silver, my father's books, all my good dresses. Spent months traveling in wagons and trains and stagecoaches, all for a man who already had a wife." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "I feel like such a fool." "You are not a fool. You are a woman who took a chance on hope. Nothing foolish about that." His words, simple as they were, made something loosen in Lydia's chest. She blinked back tears she had been holding for days. They continued climbing, and the air grew colder and thinner. Lydia could see her breath now, white puffs in the lantern light. She was grateful for the horse's warmth beneath her and the heavy coat around her shoulders. Without them, she would already be shivering violently. "Do you live alone up here?" she asked. "Yes, built the cabin myself 5 years ago. Got about 200 head of cattle scattered through the valleys, and I breed horses. Sell them to ranchers and the army. It is a good life, quiet, suits me. Do you not get lonely sometimes?" August was quiet for a moment. "But I prefer lonely to being around the wrong people. I spent enough years around people who only cause trouble. Up here, it is peaceful. Honest work, clean air, no one trying to swindle or hurt you." Lydia thought about that. She had always lived in cities, surrounded by people and noise and activity. The idea of living alone in the mountains seemed both frightening and appealing. After the betrayal and hardship of recent months, peace sounded like a precious gift. "What will you do?" August asked. "After tonight, I mean. Do you have a plan?" "No." The admission hurt, but there was no point in lying. "I do not know what I will do. I have no money, no possessions, no prospects. I suppose I will have to find some kind of work, any kind, and hope I can survive the winter. Red River is not a good place for a woman alone. I have noticed." They walked in silence again, and Lydia found herself studying the back of August's head, what she could see of him in the dim light. He was a big man, probably in his late 20s, with broad shoulders and a steady, confident way of moving. His voice had a roughness to it, but his words had been kind. She wondered what his story was, why he had chosen this solitary life in the mountains. The trail grew steeper, and Lydia had to hold tight to the saddle horn to keep her balance. The horse picked its way carefully over the rocky path, clearly familiar with the route. After what felt like much longer than an hour, Lydia saw a light ahead. As they drew closer, she could make out the shape of a cabin nestled against the mountainside, smoke rising from its chimney. The cabin was larger than she expected, built of solid logs with a covered porch and real glass windows. There was a barn nearby and several fenced corrals. As they approached, two dogs came running out, barking at first but then wagging their tails when they recognized August. "Easy, boys," August said to the dogs. "We have a guest." He helped Lydia down from the horse, and she was shocked by how stiff and sore she had become during the ride. Her legs nearly gave out when her feet touched the ground, and August caught her elbow to steady her. "Sorry," she murmured. "I am not used to riding. No need to apologize. Get inside where it is warm. I will take care of the horse and be in shortly." Lydia walked toward the cabin on unsteady legs, the two dogs sniffing at her curiously. She pushed open the door and stepped inside, and the warmth hit her like a wave. A fire burned in a large stone fireplace, casting golden light over the interior. The cabin was one large room with a sleeping area in one corner, a kitchen area with a cast iron stove in another, and a sitting area with handmade furniture near the fireplace. Everything was neat and well-maintained, surprising for a bachelor's home. There were shelves with books, pegs on the wall holding coats and tools, a table with two chairs. The floor was wood plank, swept clean, with a few woven rugs scattered around. Lydia moved closer to the fireplace and held her hands out to the warmth. She could not remember the last time she had been truly warm. Slowly, feeling began to return to her frozen fingers and toes, accompanied by painful tingling. She wanted to cry from the relief of it. The door opened and August entered, bringing a gust of cold air with him. He removed his hat and hung it on a peg, then shrugged out of his sheepskin jacket. In the firelight, Lydia could see him properly for the first time. He had a strong, weathered face with high cheekbones and a straight nose. His beard was neatly trimmed, dark brown with hints of red in it. His eyes were a striking light blue, unexpected against his tanned skin and dark hair. He was handsome in a rough, masculine way, the kind of handsomeness that came from hard work and outdoor living rather than refined features. "Are you hungry?" he asked, moving to the kitchen area. "I ate some jerky earlier, but yes, I am hungry." Lydia was always hungry these days. The small amounts of food she had been able to afford barely took the edge off her appetite. August set about preparing food with efficient movements. He sliced bread from a fresh loaf, cut chunks of cheese, and pulled out a pot of what looked like stew that had been staying warm on the stove. He ladled the stew into two bowls and brought everything to the table. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. Lydia sat and stared at the food in front of her. The stew was thick with meat and vegetables, steam rising from it in fragrant waves. Her mouth watered. "Go ahead," August said, settling into the other chair with his own bowl. Lydia picked up the spoon and tasted the stew. It was delicious, rich and savory, and she had to force herself not to gulp it down like a starving animal. August ate his meal calmly, not watching her with pity or judgment, just eating his own food and letting her eat hers. When she had finished the bowl, he quietly refilled it without asking. She ate the second, helping more slowly, along with the bread and cheese. By the time she finished, her stomach felt full for the first time in weeks. "Thank you," she said softly. "You have been very kind. There is water in the pitcher if you are thirsty. I do not keep much in the way of spirits, but I have coffee if you want some." "Water is fine." August poured them each a glass of water from a ceramic pitcher. Lydia drank deeply, then sat back in her chair, feeling almost dizzy from the sudden sensation of being warm and fed and safe. "You can sleep in the bed," August said. "I will take the floor by the fire." "No, I cannot take your bed. You have already done so much. The bed is more comfortable and you need rest. I have slept on worse than a floor, believe me." His tone made it clear this was not up for discussion. Lydia was too exhausted to argue. She glanced at the bed in the corner, a simple frame with what looked like a thick mattress and several wool blankets. It looked like heaven. "There is a washing basin and pitcher behind that screen if you want to clean up," August added, nodding toward a folding screen in the corner near the bed. "I will step outside for a bit, give you privacy." He pulled on his jacket and went back out into the cold night, the dogs following him. Lydia moved behind the screen and found the basin and a bar of soap. She washed her face and hands, scrubbing away days of dirt and despair. There was a small mirror propped on a shelf, and she barely recognized the face staring back at her. She looked gaunt, with dark circles under her eyes and lips chapped from the dry mountain air. Her dark blonde hair was tangled and dull, falling loose around her shoulders. She did her best to smooth her hair and braid it, then returned to the main room. August came back inside a few minutes later, stomping snow off his boots. "Started snowing," he said. "Good thing we got here when we did." Lydia looked at him with alarm. "Snow? Just flurries now, but it will get heavier. First real snow of the season, looks like." He moved to the fireplace and added another log. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we can figure out what to do." Lydia wanted to ask what he meant by that, but exhaustion was pulling at her like an undertow. She moved to the bed and slipped under the blankets, not even bothering to remove the oversized coat. The mattress was stuffed with something soft, and the blankets were heavy and warm. She sank into it with a sigh. From across the room she could see August arranging blankets on the floor near the fire. He moved with the ease of someone who had done this many times before. The dogs settled near him, curling into furry balls. "August," she said quietly. "Yes. Why are you helping me, truly?" He was quiet for a long moment. "My sister," he finally said. "I had a younger sister, Emma. When I was 20, she ran off with a man who promised her the world. He abandoned her in a mining camp in Colorado, left her with nothing. She tried to make it on her own, tried to find work. She ended up sick and alone and desperate." He paused. "She died that winter, pneumonia. By the time I found out where she was and went looking for her, she had been dead for 2 months. Lydia's throat tightened. "I am so sorry. I swore after that if I ever had the chance to help someone in a similar situation, I would. So here we are. Now get some rest." Lydia closed her eyes, but sleep did not come immediately. She lay there thinking about August's sister, about all the women who found themselves desperate and alone with nowhere to turn. She thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought her to this mountain cabin. Tomorrow she would have to leave and face the harsh reality of her situation again. But for tonight, she was safe and warm when she finally slept. It was deep and dreamless, the sleep of someone who had not felt secure in a very long time. Lydia woke to morning light streaming through the windows and the smell of coffee and bacon. For a confused moment, She could not remember where she was. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back. She sat up in bed and saw August at the stove, cooking breakfast. The dogs were lying by the door, and through the window she could see that several inches of snow had fallen overnight, transforming the world into white. "Morning," August said without turning around. "Hope you slept well." "I did, thank you." Lydia stood and folded the blankets neatly. She felt awkward, uncertain of what was expected of her. "Breakfast is almost ready. There is a privy out back if you need it. Path is clear." Lydia pulled on the big coat and ventured outside. The cold air was sharp and clean, and the snow sparkled in the morning sunlight. The mountains rose up all around, their peaks gleaming white against the blue sky. It was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. When she returned inside, August had set the table with plates of bacon, eggs, and biscuits. They ate together in comfortable silence, and Lydia found herself sneaking glances at him. In the daylight, she could see more details. There were scars on his hands, the marks of hard work. His face had lines around his eyes, probably from squinting in the bright mountain sun. He had a quiet, steady presence that made her feel safe. "The snow will make it difficult to get back to town," August said, setting down his coffee cup. "Trail can be dangerous when it is slippery. Probably best to wait a day or two until it melts some or gets packed down." "Oh." Lydia did not know if she was relieved or anxious about this development. "I do not want to impose on you." "You are not imposing. But we should talk practically about your situation. What are your skills?" "I can read and write. I am good with numbers. I can cook and clean and sew. I taught at a Sunday school back in St. Louis, so I am good with children." August nodded thoughtfully. "Red River does not have much call for teaching, and the positions for domestic work are scarce. Have you thought about going somewhere else? Santa Fe, maybe, or Albuquerque? Bigger towns might have more opportunities." "I have no money for travel. I do not even have money for a week's room and board." "What about family back east? Could you write to them, ask for help getting back home?" Lydia shook her head. "There is no one. My parents are dead. I have aunts and uncles, but they made it clear they could not help me. That is part of why I was so desperate to believe Robert Clemens. He offered me something I thought I had lost, a chance at family, at belonging somewhere." August was quiet, his blue eyes studying her face. Lydia felt exposed under his gaze, vulnerable, but she did not look away. "I have a proposition," he finally said. "Winter is the hardest time up here. I have to check on my cattle, make sure they have access to food and water, fix fences, tend the horses, keep the place running. It is a lot of work for one person. I could use help. You are offering me work, room and board in exchange for help around the place. Cooking, cleaning, mending, helping with the animals when needed. It would not be easy. The winters here are harsh and we are isolated. But you would be safe and fed and have a warm place to sleep." Lydia's heart began to pound. "You would let me stay here, through the winter, if you are willing to work, yes. Come spring, you would have time to figure out your next move, maybe save some money if I can pay you a bit on top of room and board." He paused. "I need to be clear, though. This is an offer of work, nothing more. You would have your space, I would have mine. I am not Robert Clemens. I do not make promises I cannot keep, and I do not take advantage of people in difficult situations." Relief and gratitude flooded through Lydia so intensely she felt dizzy. "Yes," she said quickly. "Yes, I will work hard. I will earn my keep. Thank you. We will try it out for a week, see if it works for both of us. If it does not, we will figure something else out. Fair. Fair." They shook hands across the table, and Lydia felt the roughness of his palm against hers, the strength in his grip. She had a sudden sense that her life had just changed course in a fundamental way. The next week passed in a blur of activity. The snow continued on and off. sometimes light flurries, sometimes heavier storms that blanketed the mountains in fresh white. August showed Lydia around the property, explaining how everything worked. The barn housed 4 horses in addition to the one August had ridden to town. There were chickens in a coop that provided eggs. The cattle were scattered across the high meadows, and August rode out each day to check on them. Lydia threw herself into making the cabin comfortable and functional. She cleaned everything thoroughly, organized the kitchen supplies, mended clothes and linens that had been neglected. She cooked hearty meals, baked bread, made sure there was always hot coffee and a warm fire. She fed the chickens and collected eggs, learning to navigate the snowy paths with increasing confidence. August was a quiet man, not much given to conversation, but Lydia found she did not mind. When he did speak, his words were thoughtful and genuine. He treated her with respect and kindness, always careful to maintain proper boundaries. He had strung a blanket across one corner of the cabin to give her a private sleeping area, and he never intruded on her space. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, August reading from his collection of books or working on tack and tools that needed repair, Lydia sewing or knitting. Sometimes they talked. She learned that August was 28, originally from Texas, and had come to New Mexico territory after serving in the Army. He did not talk much about his time in the service, but she gathered it had been difficult. He had used his military pay to buy this land and start his ranch, choosing a solitary life far from towns and people. She told him more about her own life, about growing up in St. Louis, about her parents' deaths, about the loneliness that had made her vulnerable to Robert Clemens' lies. August listened without judgment, and Lydia found herself opening up in ways she had not with anyone in years. As the week drew to a close, August brought up the subject of their arrangement. They were sitting at the table after supper, drinking coffee while snow fell softly outside. "The week is up," he said. "How do you feel about staying on?" "I would like to stay if you will have me," Lydia said. "I am grateful for this opportunity. You have been a big help. Place has not been this organized or comfortable since I built it." He paused. "I want to make sure you are staying because you want to, not because you feel you have no other choice." "I am staying because I want to," Lydia said honestly. "You have treated me with more kindness and respect than anyone has in a long time, and I like it here. It is peaceful." August nodded, something that might have been relief crossing his face. "Good. Then we will continue as we have been. Winter will get harder from here, but we will manage." December arrived with bitter cold and heavy snows. Lydia had never experienced winter like this. The snow piled up in drifts higher than her head. The wind howled down from the peaks like a living thing. Some days, August could not go far from the cabin because the conditions were too dangerous. They were truly isolated, cut off from the rest of the world. But inside the cabin, there was warmth and comfort. Lydia had never felt so safe. She and August fell into an easy rhythm, working together to keep everything running. He taught her how to handle the horses, how to check for signs of illness or injury in the cattle when they ventured out on clearer days. She taught him the finer points of cooking, showing him how to make proper gravy and how to bake pies when they had dried apples. She found herself watching him sometimes, admiring the way he moved, strong and capable. He was gentle with the animals, patient when teaching her new skills. She noticed the way his eyes crinkled when he almost smiled, the rare moments when he laughed at something she said. Her heart would do a strange flip in her chest during those moments. One evening in mid-December, a particularly fierce storm trapped them inside. The wind was so strong it rattled the windows, and snow fell so thick they could barely see the barn. August spent the day maintaining the fire and making sure the cabin stayed warm. Lydia cooked and baked, filling the space with the smells of bread and stew. As night fell, they sat by the fire as usual. Lydia was working on knitting a scarf, and August was reading. The wind howled outside, but inside it was cozy and safe. Lydia found herself thinking about how strange life was. A month ago, she had been freezing and desperate, alone in the desert with nothing to her name but a coat she had traded her last possession for. Now she was warm and fed and learning how to live in the mountains with a kind man who had given her a second chance. "What are you thinking about?" August asked, looking up from his book. "How much has changed?" Lydia said. "A month ago, I did not think I would survive the winter. Now here I am, warm and safe in a cabin in the mountains. Strange how life works sometimes." "Do you ever regret offering to help me?" she asked. "Taking in a stranger must have seemed foolish." "No." August set down his book. "You have brought life to this place. I did not realize how lonely I was until I had company. Good company, I mean." Something in his voice made Lydia look up from her knitting. He was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. The firelight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the strong planes of his cheekbones, the line of his jaw. "I was lonely too," she said softly. "Even before Robert Clemens, even back in St. Louis. I always felt like I was on the outside of life, watching everyone else live while I just existed. But here, I feel like I am actually living. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense." August leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Lydia, I need to tell you something. The way I feel about you, it has become more than just appreciation for your help around here. I think about you all the time. I look forward to seeing your face in the morning and talking with you in the evening. I find myself wanting to make you smile, wanting to know everything about you." Lydia's hands stilled on her knitting. Her heart was racing. "August, I know this is complicated. You came here out of necessity, and I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated in any way. But I also believe in honesty, and I would be dishonest if I pretended my feelings were simply those of an employer or friend." He paused. "I care about you, Lydia, deeply." The words hung in the air between them. Lydia set down her knitting and looked at this man who had saved her life, who had given her shelter and respect and kindness. She thought about the past month, about how comfortable she felt with him, how safe, how seen. She thought about the way her heart lifted when he came back from checking the cattle, how she found excuses to stand near him in the kitchen, how she noticed every detail about him. "I care about you too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have been afraid to admit it, even to myself. I thought perhaps it was just gratitude, but it is more than that, so much more." August stood and crossed the small space between them. He knelt beside her chair and took her hand in his larger, calloused one. "I do not want you to confuse gratitude with affection. What I am offering you is not dependent on how you feel about me. You have a home here regardless." "I know that." Lydia met his eyes. "And that is part of why I trust what I am feeling. You have never asked for anything from me. You have only given. You have shown me what a good man looks like, and I find myself falling in love with you." August's breath caught. "Lydia." "I am falling in love with you, August Davis," she said again, more firmly. "Maybe I already have fallen. I do not know exactly when it happened, but it did." He reached up and touched her face, his rough fingers gentle against her cheek. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I have since that first night when I found you among those boulders, so brave and so vulnerable at the same time." Then he leaned in and kissed her, soft and careful, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Lydia did not pull away. She leaned into the kiss, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart under her palm. The kiss deepened. And Lydia felt something break open inside her, all the loneliness and fear of the past months dissolving in the warmth of August's embrace. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I want to do this right," August said, his forehead resting against hers. "I want to court you properly, marry you if you will have me, build a life together." "Yes," Lydia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes to all of it." They stayed up late that night, talking and making plans, stealing kisses between words. The storm raged outside, but neither of them cared. They had found something worth more than shelter from the cold. They had found each other. Christmas came, and August surprised Lydia by producing a small package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a beautiful silver comb for her hair, delicately engraved with flowers. "I bought it months ago in Santa Fe," he admitted. "I saw it and thought it was beautiful, but I had no reason to buy it. Now I am glad I did." Lydia treasured the gift, wearing it in her hair every day. She had made August a new shirt from fabric she found in his storage chest, staying up late nights to sew it in secret. When he put it on Christmas morning, she thought he looked impossibly handsome. They celebrated quietly, just the two of them and the dogs, but it was the best Christmas Lydia had ever had. They cooked a special meal together, and August even produced a bottle of whiskey he had been saving. They toasted to new beginnings and to the strange journey that had brought them together. As winter deepened, their love grew stronger. August was affectionate but always respectful, never pushing for more than Lydia was comfortable with. They held hands while sitting by the fire. They kissed good morning and good night. They talked about their future, about the ranch, about the life they would build together. In February, during a brief warm spell that melted some of the snow, August took Lydia to check on the cattle in the high meadow. It was a beautiful day, the sky brilliant blue, the mountains stark white against it. They rode together on August's horse, Lydia seated in front of him, his arms around her keeping her safe and warm. When they reached the meadow and confirmed the cattle were healthy, August helped Lydia down from the horse. He was quiet, and Lydia could tell he was nervous about something. "What is it?" she asked. August pulled something from his coat pocket. It was a small box, worn leather. He opened it to reveal a gold ring with a single small diamond. "It was my mother's," he said. "The only thing I have from her. I want you to have it. I want you to be my wife, Lydia Reynolds. Will you marry me?" Lydia looked at the ring, then at August's face, so full of hope and love. She thought about the gold ring she had traded away, the last possession from her old life. She had traded it for warmth, for survival, never dreaming that the transaction would lead her here, to this moment, to this man offering her not just a ring but a lifetime. "Yes," she said, her voice strong and clear in the mountain air. "Yes, I will marry you." August slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her there in the snow-covered meadow with the mountains rising around them and the cattle grazing peacefully nearby. It was a moment of pure joy, untainted by doubt or fear. They married in early March, as soon as the trails were clear enough to reach Red River. The ceremony was simple, held at the small church with only a handful of witnesses, including the minister and his wife. Lydia wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself, and August wore his best clothes, his hair neatly trimmed and his beard groomed. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, August kissed her with such tenderness that Lydia felt tears slide down her cheeks. They were married. She had a husband, a home, a future. The return to the mountain cabin felt different now. It was not just a place where she worked and stayed. It was her home. She was Mrs. August Davis, and the realization filled her with profound happiness. Their wedding night was gentle and sweet. August was patient and caring, making sure Lydia felt loved and cherished. Afterward, they lay together in the bed they now shared, wrapped in each other's arms, talking quietly in the darkness. "Are you happy?" August asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Lydia said honestly. "When I traded my mother's ring for that coat, I thought I was trading it for survival, for a few more days of life. I never imagined it would lead me to you. I am glad you survived. I cannot imagine my life without you now." "Do you think about your sister sometimes?" "Emma. Yes, I think she would have liked you. You remind me of her in some ways. Brave, resilient, kind." August was quiet for a moment. "I like to think that helping you was my way of honoring her memory. I could not save her, but I could save you." "You did save me," Lydia said, turning to face him in the darkness. "In every way a person can be saved." Spring came slowly to the high country, melting the snow inch by inch. Lydia threw herself into making the cabin truly theirs. She planted a garden near the house, coaxing vegetables from the rocky soil. She helped August with the horses and cattle, learning more about ranching every day. She was a quick learner, and August often praised her ability to handle the work. In May, August had to make a trip to Santa Fe to sell some horses. He was gone for a week, the longest they had been apart since their marriage. Lydia missed him fiercely, but kept busy maintaining the ranch in his absence. When he returned, she ran to meet him and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around. "I missed you," he said, kissing her soundly. "I missed you too. Did the trip go well?" "Very well. Sold all 4 horses for good prices. And I brought you something." He pulled a package from his saddlebag and handed it to her. Inside was a length of beautiful green fabric, soft and fine. "For a new dress," August explained. "I saw it and thought it would match your eyes." Lydia hugged him tight. "You spoil me. I like spoiling you." That night, as they lay together in bed, Lydia realized she had something important to tell him. She had been waiting for him to return to share the news. "August, I think I am pregnant," she said softly. He went very still beside her. "Pregnant?" "I am not certain yet, but I have missed my monthly courses twice, and I have been feeling queasy in the mornings. I think we are going to have a baby." August sat up and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. She could feel his heart pounding against her cheek. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy." He pulled back to look at her face, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Lydia, I am overwhelmed. A baby. A family. I never thought I would have this." They held each other for a long time, both of them crying and laughing at once, overwhelmed by the magnitude of this new development. The months that followed were busy ones. August became even more protective of Lydia, insisting she not overwork herself. She still helped around the ranch, but he took on the harder tasks, not wanting her to strain herself. They prepared for the baby's arrival, setting up a cradle that August built with his own hands, sewing tiny clothes and blankets. In November, exactly 1 year after August had found Lydia among the boulders outside Red River, their son was born. The labor was long and difficult, and August stayed by Lydia's side the entire time, holding her hand and encouraging her. When the baby finally arrived, healthy and squalling, August wept openly. "He is perfect," he said, holding the tiny bundle carefully. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas Davis after August's father. Thomas had dark hair like his father and blue-green eyes that seemed to shift color in the light. He was a good baby, healthy and strong, and both parents doted on him. Lydia found motherhood came naturally to her. She loved everything about caring for Thomas, from nursing him to changing him to rocking him to sleep. August was a devoted father, always eager to hold his son, talking to him constantly even though Thomas was far too young to understand. The winter passed quickly, busy with the demands of a new baby and the ranch. Spring came again, and Thomas grew bigger and more alert. By summer, he was smiling and cooing, reaching for things with his chubby hands. One evening in August, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset with Thomas sleeping in Lydia's arms, August said, "Do you ever think about how different your life could have been?" "All the time," Lydia admitted. "If you had not come along that night, I would have frozen to death. Or worse. I think about the path that led me here, all the painful steps, and I realize that every single one was necessary to bring me to you. Even Robert Clemens, even him. I wish he had been honest, but if he had been, I never would have come to New Mexico territory. I never would have been in Red River that night. I never would have met you." August reached over and took her free hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "I used to think my life was complete up here alone. I thought I had everything I needed. Then you came along and showed me what I was missing. You and Thomas are my whole world. You are ours too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deep purple. The mountains stood eternal around them, the same mountains that had witnessed their first meeting, their falling in love, their marriage, and now their life as a family. 2 years later, Lydia gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Emma after August's sister. Emma had Lydia's blonde hair and August's blue eyes, and she was the light of her father's life. August had been devoted to Thomas, but with Emma, he was absolutely wrapped around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. "She looks like you," he told Lydia, holding Emma gently while the baby slept. "Beautiful like her mother." Thomas, now an energetic 2-year-old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He wanted to help with everything, bringing her toys, patting her head gently, singing to her in his baby voice. Lydia watched her family with a heart so full she thought it might burst. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch prospered under August's management. He expanded the herd, bred more horses, built additional outbuildings. Lydia managed the household and the garden, which grew larger and more productive each year. She also started selling eggs and butter to families in Red River, bringing in extra income. The children grew healthy and happy. Thomas was adventurous and bold, always eager to help his father with the ranch work. Emma was thoughtful and gentle, with a love for animals that rivaled August's. They were often accompanied by the ranch dogs, who appointed themselves the children's protectors and playmates. When Thomas was 5 and Emma was 3, Lydia became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first two, and she was often tired and sick. August worried constantly, hovering over her, insisting she rest. "I am fine," she assured him repeatedly. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. You are not just any woman. You are my woman, and I need you to be safe." The baby, another boy they named Samuel, arrived healthy and strong in the spring. Samuel had red-brown hair like his father and a calm, easy temperament. He rarely cried, seeming content to observe the world with wise eyes. With 3 children, the cabin felt crowded, and August began building an addition. He worked through the summer, expanding the cabin to include 2 more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The children were excited about having their own rooms, and Lydia was thrilled to have more space. One evening, when the addition was nearly complete, August found Lydia standing in what would be the new kitchen, looking out the window at the mountains. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "I am thinking about how far we have come. Do you remember when this cabin was just 1 room, when it was just you living here alone? I remember. Seems like a lifetime ago. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is my life. That I am here with you and our children, living in these mountains, happy and safe." August turned her around to face him. "Do you have any regrets? About coming west, about everything that happened, not a single one. If I could go back and change things, I would not. Because every difficult moment led me here to you, to this life we have built together. He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, the kind of kiss that still made her knees weak even after years of marriage. I love you, Lydia Davis, more than I can ever properly express. I love you too. Always. The years continued to pass. Thomas grew into a capable young man, learning everything August could teach him about ranching and horses. Emma developed a talent for training the horses that surprised even her father. Samuel proved to be academically inclined, always reading whatever books he could get his hands on, asking questions about everything. When Thomas was 15, Emma 13, and Samuel 10, August and Lydia found themselves expecting their fourth child. Lydia was 40 by then and worried about having a baby at her age, but the pregnancy went smoothly. Their daughter, whom they named Rose, was born on a beautiful autumn day, healthy and perfect. Rose completed their family. She had Lydia's personality, bright and cheerful, always finding joy in small things. The older children doted on their baby sister, and August joked that Rose would be impossibly spoiled with 3 older siblings catering to her every whim. As the children grew older, the ranch continued to prosper. August was known throughout the territory as a breeder of fine horses, and people came from far and wide to buy from him. Thomas worked alongside his father, learning the business and proving himself capable. Emma spent her days working with the horses, developing techniques for training them that were both effective and gentle. Samuel helped his mother with the household accounts and the egg and butter business, which had expanded considerably over the years. When Thomas turned 20, he announced his engagement to a girl from Red River, the daughter of the general store owner. The wedding was held at the ranch, with half the territory attending. It was a joyous occasion, and Lydia cried watching her firstborn son marry his sweetheart. 2 years later, Emma married a rancher from the next valley over, a good man who respected her skills with horses and wanted to partner with her in breeding them. Again, the ranch hosted a beautiful wedding, and again, Lydia cried tears of joy. Samuel eventually went to university in Santa Fe, studying law. He returned to the territory as a lawyer, settling in Santa Fe but visiting the ranch frequently. He never married, seemingly content with his books and his work. Rose, the youngest, stayed on the ranch longest. She loved the mountains and the life there, and she had no desire to leave. She eventually married a young man who came to buy horses from August and stayed for Rose. They built a house on the ranch land, and August divided the property so that Rose and her husband could manage their own portion. As August and Lydia grew older, they gradually turned over more of the ranch work to their children and grandchildren. The property remained in the family, expanding as each child developed their own part of it. The original cabin, now expanded and improved, remained August and Lydia's home. On a cold November evening, 45 years after August had found Lydia among the boulders, they sat together on their porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the sun set over the mountains. They were both in their 70s now, gray-haired and lined with age, but still very much in love. "Do you remember this night 45 years ago?" August asked, his hand finding hers under the blanket. "Of course. I was freezing and desperate, trading my mother's ring for a coat in Red River. I thought my life was over. And I was riding home from town, planning another winter alone. And then you found me. Best thing that ever happened to me, finding you." Lydia leaned her head on his shoulder. Around them, they could hear the sounds of their family, grandchildren playing in the yard, their children finishing up the day's work. The ranch was alive with the family they had created together. I was so scared that night, Lydia said softly. So alone. I remember thinking I would not survive the winter. I traded my last possession for warmth, never dreaming that warmth would come from you. I told myself I was just helping someone in need, August said, honoring my sister's memory. But the truth is, from that first night I knew you were special. I knew my life was about to change. You gave me everything, August, not just shelter and food, but a home, a family, a life worth living. You gave me a lifetime. We gave each other a lifetime. August squeezed her hand, and it has been the best lifetime I could have imagined. They sat there as the stars came out one by one, just as they had on that first night so long ago. The mountains stood eternal around them, witnesses to a love story that had begun with desperation and kindness, and grown into something beautiful and lasting. Thomas came up onto the porch, interrupting their quiet moment. He was 46 now, with children and grandchildren of his own, but to Lydia he would always be her baby boy. "Mother, father, are you coming in? It is getting cold and dinner is ready." "We will be in shortly," August said after Thomas went back inside. August turned to Lydia. "Do you know what day it is?" "November 15th. The anniversary of the night we met. 45 years ago, I found a brave, beautiful woman half frozen among some boulders. I thought I was saving her life. I did not realize she was saving mine." Lydia felt tears prick her eyes. "We saved each other." "Yes, we did." They stood slowly, their movements careful with age, and walked hand in hand into their warm, welcoming home. Inside, their family waited, 4 children, spouses, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The table was set for a feast, and the fire blazed cheerfully in the hearth. As they sat down to dinner, surrounded by the family they had created, Lydia looked at August across the table. His hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his blue eyes still sparkled when he looked at her. He gave her a small smile, the same smile he had given her 1,000 times over the past 45 years, the smile that said she was his whole world. After dinner, as the family gathered around the fire, someone asked how August and Lydia had met. The grandchildren loved this story and begged to hear it again. Lydia settled into her chair, August's hand in hers, and began to tell the story. She told them about the desperate journey west, about Robert Clemens' betrayal, about selling everything she owned piece by piece until all she had left was her mother's gold ring. She told them about trading that ring for a coat because she thought it might buy her a few more days of life. August picked up the story, describing that November night when he was riding home from Red River and found a small figure huddled among the boulders, wrapped in a coat far too large, trying to survive the cold. "I offered her shelter for the night," August said. "Just one night to get warm and fed. But one night turned into 2, then a week, then a lifetime," Lydia continued. "Your grandfather gave me work and a place to stay. He treated me with respect and kindness. He showed me what a good man looked like. And I fell in love with her," August said simply. "How could I not? She brought life and light into my lonely cabin. She made me realize I had been existing, not living. She gave me a reason to build something bigger than myself." The grandchildren listened with rapt attention, even though they had heard this story many times. It never got old, the tale of how their grandparents had found each other against all odds. Later that night, after everyone else had gone to their own homes or to bed, August and Lydia prepared for sleep. They moved slowly, their bodies tired from a full day and a lifetime of hard work, but they moved together, a team even in the simple act of getting ready for bed. As they lay together in the darkness, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been for 45 years, Lydia said, "Thank you." "For what?" "For saving me, for loving me, for giving me this beautiful life." You do not need to thank me, Lydia. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Every day with you has been a gift. I love you, August Davis. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Lydia Davis, always and forever." They fell asleep that way, holding each other. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life filled with light. August passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 years later, at the age of 76. He simply did not wake up one morning, his heart having given out in the night. Lydia was devastated, but she took comfort in knowing he had died peacefully in his own bed, surrounded by the life they had built together. She lived another 5 years, staying on the ranch, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent her days in the garden she loved, playing with great-grandchildren, telling stories about August and the early days on the ranch. She never remarried, telling anyone who asked that she had already had the love of her life. On a November morning, exactly 50 years after August had found her among the boulders, Lydia passed away quietly in her sleep. She was 80 years old. Her children found her in bed, a peaceful expression on her face, her hand resting on August's pillow as if reaching for him. They buried her next to August on a hillside overlooking the ranch, with the mountains rising eternal in the background. The entire territory came to pay their respects. Lydia and August Davis had been more than just successful ranchers. They had been an example of what love looked like, what family meant, what a life well lived could be. Their descendants continued to work the ranch for generations. The original cabin, carefully preserved, became a family shrine of sorts. The story of how Lydia traded her last possession for warmth, and how August gave her a lifetime instead, was passed down through the years, told and retold, never losing its power to move people. In the end, it was a simple story. A desperate woman and a kind man brought together by chance on a cold November night in 1876. But from that simple beginning came something extraordinary. A love that lasted a lifetime, a family that spanned generations. A legacy built on kindness, respect, hard work, and devotion. The mountains still stand there, eternal and unchanging, watching over the ranch that Lydia and August built together. And if you listen carefully on cold November nights, some say you can still feel their presence. Two souls who found each other in the wilderness and never let go. Their love story echoing through the ages as a testament to the power of compassion, courage, and true love. The Davis family ranch remains to this day, a working ranch still operated by their descendants. The original cabin has been carefully maintained, filled with photographs and mementos of Lydia and August's life together. Visitors come from all over to hear the story of the mounting cowboy and the desperate woman he saved. The woman who became his wife, his partner, his everything. On the mantel above the fireplace in that original cabin sits a shadow box. Inside is a worn brown wool coat, far too large for the small woman who once wore it. Next to it is a simple gold wedding band and a small card that reads, "She traded her last possession for warmth. He gave her a lifetime instead." It serves as a reminder that sometimes in our darkest moments, help arrives in unexpected forms. And sometimes, the choices we make in desperation lead us exactly where we are meant to be. The story of Lydia and August Davis became legendary in New Mexico territory. A tale told to inspire hope in difficult times. It reminded people that kindness matters, that one moment of compassion can change the course of a life, that love can bloom even in the harshest conditions, like a wildflower growing in the rocky mountain soil. Their great-great-grandchildren still live on portions of that original ranch land, still breed horses and cattle in the high mountain valleys, still gather around fires on cold nights to tell the story of their remarkable ancestors. The legacy of Lydia and August Davis lives on not just in their bloodline, but in the example they set, a testament to the transformative power of love, kindness, and second chances. And so the story ends where it began, in the mountains of New Mexico territory, where a desperate trade for warmth led to the greatest love story the territory had ever known, proving that sometimes the darkest nights lead to the brightest dawns, and that a single act of kindness can echo through generations, creating a legacy that never truly dies.